When a 20-year-old man, Stephen Hilder, plummeted 4,000 feet to his death during a parachute jump at RAF Hilder, England, on the 4th of July 2003, it was assumed to be a tragic accident. No one would have believed that it would soon become a major news story, and an incident that was unique in the British history of crime. That is, if it was a crime. Stephen Hilder was born on the 12th of December 1982. After finishing school, he became an officer cadet at the Defence Academy of the United Kingdom, a higher education centre for personnel in the British Armed Forces. A keen parachutist, he had been participating in a week-long British Collegiate Parachute Association Championship with fellow officer cadet teammates Adrian Blair and David Mason. All three of them were highly experienced skydivers, having made over 200 jumps each. The story kicked into high gear once the investigation by Humberside Police into Hilder's death began. Both Stephen's main and reserve parachute had been tampered with by someone who must have had expert knowledge. The risers on his reserve chute, the connections between the harness and the lines, had been cut with a hook knife. The police inspected all other parachutes on site, took DNA samples from everyone who had been present, and started a murder inquiry. The incident was recreated on the BBC's Crime Watch programme, and further appeals for information were made to the British parachuting community at large. In October 2003, Hilder's teammates Blair and Mason were arrested. Though soon released, an unnamed third man was also arrested and questioned, but all three eventually faced no charge. Then, after a 10-month investigation, came a bombshell. Physical evidence showed that there were fibers from the severed risers on Hilder's body. DNA tests on the straps showed Stephen's DNA, and his alone. The police had only one conclusion: that Stephen Hilder had cut his own parachute straps. Yet the police, together with his family and friends, found the conclusion hard to understand. No one had seen the slightest indication that Hilder intended to take his own life. One police officer was quoted as saying, "Nothing we have discovered during the investigation, and no one we have interviewed, has said anything to suggest Stephen may have been contemplating killing himself." The March 2005 coroner's inquest would reveal some potential motives for such a drastic course of action. Hilder was £17,000 in debt, largely due to the high cost of his skydiving hobby. He was approaching the end of a failed relationship and had wrongly believed he was failing his exams at the Defence Academy. The inquest also heard that he had recently turned to religion and had seemed disillusioned with the army, having contemplated transferring to the Navy. In isolation, none of these factors seemed desperate, but taken together in the life of such a young man, provided a compelling case for what may have happened. And yet, lingering suspicions of murder remained. At the same inquest, a forensic scientist testified that the lack of any other DNA related to the tampering did not exclude another person. Quite simply, they could have worn gloves. Also, the police had found a skydiving magazine at the drop zone that contained an article detailing one of the other very rare instances of parachute tampering that had taken place in the US, piquing their suspicion. The scissors that had made some of the cuts to the parachute were found in Hilder's car, but had been unsecured, again raising doubts about the identity of the saboteur. Mason had admitted at the inquest that 2 weeks prior to Hilder's death, he had removed a pin from Stephen's parachute. He insisted that he had only done so because Hilder was extremely careless with his kit, and he wanted to teach him a lesson about safety. Paul Hollow, RAF Hilder's chief instructor, told the inquest he was baffled as to why Stephen went through so many emergency procedures as he fell, if he was trying to kill himself. Hollow said, He pulled every handle available to him. I believe he made every effort to save himself. All this led Coroner Stuart Atkinson to return an open verdict, reasoning that he couldn't say with certainty that the incident was either suicide or murder. In the intervening years, more high-profile cases of parachute tampering have taken place. In 2010, a Belgian schoolteacher was sentenced to 30 years jail for killing a love rival by interfering with his parachute. And in 2015, Hilder's former drop zone army sergeant, Emile Silliers, was arrested after being suspected of tampering with his wife Victoria's parachute. He almost got away with it too, her life only being saved because her reserve chute inflated enough to break her fall. Silliers, who planned to kill his wife for a £120,000 insurance policy and then take up with his lover, was jailed in 2018 for attempted murder. In the final analysis, it seems likely that Stephen Hilder took his own life, even allowing for the attempts he appeared to make to save himself. No convincing evidence of murder has ever emerged, though the fact that it is still a possibility is chilling. Even if suicide was the case, it's a salutary warning that when it comes to dangerous sports, it's always better to put your life in your own hands.